The desert sun hung like a burning coin in the sky, smothering the land in heat and silence. The wind blew restless, dragging curtains of dust across the long stretch of road that cut through the prairie like a scar. Horses' hooves echoed from far off, steady and strong, carrying a lone rider through the wasteland. He was tall in the saddle, shoulders broad beneath a sun-bleached duster. His hat was pulled low against the glare, shadowing a face carved by hard miles and harder choices. His name was Colt McAllister, though few in these parts ever dared to call him anything but Cowboy. Folks said his blood ran half, waff, gunpowder. He'd been a ranch hand, a trail guide, a gambler, and a hired gun, but never a man tied to anything but his horse and the horizon. That was about to change. Colt reined in when he saw her. She was standing just off the road, barefoot in the dust, her dress little more than rags clinging to a thin frame. Her face was pale under the dirt, eyes wide and hollow, like she'd seen the devil himself pass through. Most men would have kept riding. In the frontier, a stranger's troubles were often heavier than lead, and no sane cowboy went looking to borrow someone else's burdens. Colt even pushed his horse forward a few more steps before something in his chest twisted. He stopped, turned his horse, and with a slow, gravel, rough voice he asked, "You want a ring or a ride?" The woman looked up at him like she didn't understand. Then, just barely, she whispered, "A ride." Her name was Clara Jameson, though she wouldn't tell him that until much later. For now, she climbed weakly onto his horse, holding herself stiff as if she feared to touch him. Colt said nothing, only nudged his horse onward, back toward Dry Creek, the nearest excuse for a town. But trouble rode quicker than either of them guessed. Dry Creek wasn't much. A line of leaning storefronts, a saloon with batwing doors, a sheriff's office that doubled as a jail, and a church with no preacher to fill it. Folks said the town had been dying since the gold rush dried up, but it hadn't quite rolled over yet. As Colt guided his horse into the street, eyes followed him. A stranger always drew looks, but a stranger carrying a ragged woman doubled the weight of those stares. Men spat tobacco. Women whispered. A few kids ran alongside until their mothers called them back. The saloon doors creaked as Colt dismounted. He lifted Clara down carefully. She clutched his arm for a moment, then straightened, trying to stand taller than her exhaustion allowed. Inside, the saloon smelled of whiskey, smoke, and dust. A piano sat quiet in the corner, its keys yellowed like bad teeth. At a table near the back, 3 men in wide hats sat playing cards, their eyes flicking up with lazy interest. Colt led Clara to the bar. Whiskey. Water for the lady. The barkeep, thin as a rail, with a mustache that looked like it might crawl off his face, poured the drinks without asking questions. Clara drank the water like she hadn't seen any in days. Only when the glass was empty did Colt speak again. "Who you running from?" Her hand trembled as it set the glass down. Her eyes darted to the doors, to the windows, to the card players in the corner. Then she whispered, "My husband's killers." Shadows in the dust, the words settled heavy. Colt didn't ask how, didn't ask why. He'd seen enough widows made by the frontier to know the story always ended the same. Blood in the dirt and law too far behind to matter. But before he could press further, the saloon doors banged open. 3 men stepped inside. They wore trail dust on their boots, revolvers on their hips, and grins that didn't reach their eyes. The room went still. Colt didn't need introductions. He'd seen that look in men before. The look of wolves scenting blood. The tallest one, with a scar across his cheek, pointed straight at Clara. "There she is." Her breath hitched. Colt's hand slid toward his Colt .45. What followed moved like lightning. The outlaws fanned out, chairs scraped as townsfolk scattered. Clara froze. The scarbled man sneered. "Step aside, cowboy. Ain't your quarrel." Colt tilted his hat back, his voice calm as a rattle before the strike. "Thing is, I don't step aside for buzzards." The room held its breath. Then the gunfire cracked like thunder. Colt moved first, his revolver cleared leather, barking twice. One outlaw crumpled, blood splattering across the card table. The others fired back, glass shattering, the piano exploding into splinters. Clara screamed and ducked behind the bar. Colt dove sideways, rolling, his duster flaring. He fired again, the second man spinning and collapsing in the sawdust. Only Scarface remained. He snarled, raising his revolver. Then Colt was on him, slamming his gun hand aside and driving a fist into his jaw. They crashed through a table, wood splinters flying. The outlaw clawed for his gun again, but Colt pressed the barrel of his Colt .45 against the man's chest. "Ride out," Colt growled. "Don't stop riding till you hit Mexico." Scarface spat blood, but the fire in his eyes told Colt this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Aftermath, the saloon settled into uneasy silence. Folks peered from behind tables, from behind shattered bottles. Colt holstered his gun, pulled Clara up from behind the bar. She clung to him like a drowning woman to driftwood. "You just painted a target on your back," the barkeep muttered, sweeping glass with shaking hands. Colt adjusted his hat. Wouldn't be the first time. Outside, the sun dipped lower, bleeding across the horizon. Colt knew the outlaws would come again. Scarface wasn't the kind to forgive. And Clara Jameson carried a secret worth killing for. He could see it in the fear behind her eyes. He'd meant to ride through Dry Creek without a second glance. But now, with Clara by his side and blood spilled in the sawdust, he felt the pull of something stronger than the trail. The West had its claws in him again. And the story was only just beginning. The night came hard over Dry Creek. The desert sky stretched black and endless, stars burning cold above a town that seemed to shrink under its weight. Wind rattled loose shutters, carrying the scent of gun smoke still lingering from the saloon fight. Every man and woman in town knew it wasn't finished. Scarface and his kind never forgot. The sheriff's warning, Sheriff Amos Kane, was a lean, weathered man with eyes like flint. He found Colt on the boardwalk outside the saloon, where the cowboy leaned against a post, rolling a smoke and watching the street as though expecting the devil himself to stroll down it. "You've stirred a hornet's nest, McAllister," Kane said, spitting into the dust. Colt struck a match, lit his smoke, and didn't answer right away. The silence stretched until Kane sighed. "Scarface Jack Mallory. That was him in the saloon, him and two of his riders. He runs with a pack now, 6, maybe 7 men. They've been bleeding ranches dry from here to the Rio Grande. Murder, cattle rustling, stagecoach robbery, you name it." Colt took a slow drag. "And you let him roam free?" Kane's jaw tightened. "I've got 2 deputies in a jail with a broken lock. Dry Creek's no army. If Mallory wants this town, he can take it. Only reason he ain't yet is 'cause he likes watching us squirm." From the shadows of the saloon doorway, Clara stepped forward, her arms crossed tight over her chest. Her voice trembled but held steel underneath. "They killed my husband, took everything we had, and now they want me dead too." Kane's eyes softened, just for a moment. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for your loss. But truth is, a woman's tears don't stop bullets." A Colt flicked ash into the dirt. "Maybe not, but a steady hand can." The sheriff studied him, then nodded slowly. "Sun's barely set. You've got a few hours 'fore Mallory comes knockin'. I'd suggest riding out while you can." Colt looked at Clara. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set. She wasn't running. Neither was he. The long night they holed up in the livery stable. Colt saddled his horse and laid his rifle across a bale of hay, cleaning it with steady, methodical movements. Clara sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes following every motion. "You didn't have to stop for me," she whispered. Colt didn't look up. "Could have rode past. Thought about it. Then why didn't you?" The cowboy paused, hands resting on the rifle. Memories flickered in the back of his mind. Another woman, years ago, left crying in the dust because he hadn't stopped. He never forgot her face. "Sometimes," he said finally, "a man gets tired of riding alone." Clara swallowed hard, her eyes glistening in the lantern light. Before either could say more, the wind shifted. Hoofbeats echoed faint and distant, carried across the desert like the drum of war. Colt rose, cocking the rifle. "They're coming." A fire and lead Mallory's gang rode in at midnight. 7 riders, their silhouettes black against the starlit sand. They came slow, deliberate, like wolves circling a campfire. Colt crouched behind an upturned wagon, rifle braced on the wood. Clara lay flat in the shadows, clutching a pistol he'd pressed into her hands. Mallory's voice carried across the street, smooth and mocking. "Callister, you got something of mine. Hand her over, and maybe I'll let you keep your skin." Colt answered with a rifle shot. The bullet sparked off Mallory's stirrup, throwing his horse sideways. The street erupted in gunfire. Bullets tore through windows, punched holes in walls, shattered lanterns. Flames caught quick, licking up the side of the general store. Dry Creek woke screaming. Colt fired steady, picking his shots, dropping one outlaw clean off his horse. Clara, hand shaking, managed to squeeze a shot into the night, missing wide, but drawing fire away from him. Mallory roared, his scarred face twisted with fury. He spurred his horse forward, revolvers blazing. Colt ducked, rolled, came up firing, his bullet grazing Mallory's shoulder, spinning him half out of the saddle. But Mallory didn't fall. He laughed. "This ain't over, cowboy! You just signed your death warrant!" And with that, the gang pulled back into the night, leaving fire and screams in their wake. Aftermath of ashes by dawn, Dry Creek was a scarred shell. 2 buildings burned to the ground. The undertaker laid out 3 townsfolk in pine boxes. and Mallory's threat hung heavier than the smoke. Sheriff Kane wiped sweat from his brow. You made your stand, McAllister. Now you'll pay for it. Mallory won't quit till you're 6 feet under. Colt holstered his revolver, jaw tight. Then I'll dig him a hole first. Clara touched his arm, her voice barely above a whisper. You can still leave. I won't hold it against you. Colt met her gaze. Something unspoken passed between them. No, he said. I reckon I gave you a ride. Now it's time to see if I can give you a ring. Her breath caught. For the first time, hope sparked in her eyes. The final ride they rode out that evening, Colt, Clara, and Kane with his 2 deputies. If Mallory wanted blood, Colt intended to take the fight to him. The trail wound into the Badlands, where red cliffs loomed and shadows played tricks on the eyes. It was outlaw country where lawmen vanished and buzzards circled before the shooting even started. The sun bled into the horizon when they found Mallory's camp. 7 riders no longer. 5 remained, hard-eyed, rifles glinting in the fading light. Mallory sat at their center, his scar burning crimson in the sunset. Colt dismounted. His spurs jingled as he stepped forward.
Jack Mallory, he called.
This ends tonight. A Mallory grinned, teeth flashing like a wolf's. So be it, cowboy. The 2 men squared off, the world shrinking to the space between them. High noon at sundown, silence. The desert held its breath. Colt's hand hovered near his revolver. Mallory's did the same. Time slowed to a crawl, the air thick with dust and death. Then steel flashed. 2 shots cracked as one. Mallory staggered, clutching his chest, eyes wide with shock. His gun slipped from his hand, clattering into the dirt. He dropped to his knees, then fell face first into the dust. Colt stood steady, smoke curling from his barrel. The gang broke, scattering into the Badlands like rats. Kane and his deputies gave chase, gunfire echoing against the cliffs. Clara ran to Colt, her hands trembling as they pressed against his arm. You're hit, she gasped. Colt shook his head, holstering his revolver. Not this time. A ring or a ride. Days later, Dry Creek began to rebuild. The saloon hammered up new boards. The townsfolk walked easier, their eyes no longer haunted by Mallory's shadow. Colt stood at the edge of town, saddling his horse. Clara approached, her ragged dress replaced with a borrowed gown, her hair brushed clean. You're leavin', she said softly. Colt adjusted the reins. Never was one for staying put. She bit her lip, fighting back words she didn't dare speak. He looked at her, the hard lines of his face softening. That night, when I asked if you wanted a ring or a ride, I reckon you deserve both. From his pocket, he pulled a simple silver band. Tarnished, worn, but whole. Clara's breath caught as he slipped it into her hand. I ain't much of a man for promises, Colt said. But if you'll have me, I'll give you what I can. Tears welled in her eyes. She smiled through them. It's more than enough. Colt swung into the saddle, then reached down, offering his hand. Seaman, Mrs. McAllister, he said with the faintest smile. We got a long trail ahead. She took his hand, climbed up behind him, and together they rode out, into the horizon, into the unknown, into a future born from dust, blood, and the unyielding heart of the West.